3 Algebra Lesson 8-8, Graphing Linear Inequalities, Part 2. When we graphed linear inequalities in last lesson, we only graphed one inequality at a time. Now we're going to graph a system of inequalities, which are 2 or more linear inequalities. Solving a system of linear inequalities is similar to solving a system of equations. Either the inequalities will cross, which means you'll have 4 different regions you could be shading from, and only one of those 4 will work. They will never cross, which means either the solution will be between the 2 parallel lines or outside of the 2 parallel lines, or they will be the same line. Okay? Very rarely will you have them be the same line because that doesn't happen very often, but it still could be possible. When you solve systems of inequalities, you're going to solve them very similar to solving systems of equations. Graph the first inequality with the proper boundary line and shade it in one color. Graph the second inequality with the proper boundary line and shade it in a different color. And the solutions are the coordinates of all the points in the regions that are shaded in both colors. If you don't want to shade in 2 different colors, I can show you a little shortcut that I use so that I don't always have to carry a lot of colored pencils with me. But the point is the same. It's best if you shade again with colored pencil so that you don't make a mistake. Let's look at the following systems. We're going to solve these systems. Y is less than or equal to negative 2x minus 5, and y is less than 1/2 x. And here we have 2 equations, 2 inequalities. I'm going to name them 1 and 2 just because it makes it easier. They're both in slope-intercept form, so they're both easy to graph. This one, the slope is negative 2. Fix that a little bit. Slope is negative 2, and the y-intercept is negative 5. So if I was to look at my graph, I go down here at negative 5. My slope is down to right 1 or up to left 1. Remember, down and to the right is the same as up and to the left. Okay, this happens to be a solid line. I'm going to do this one with a solid line and this one with a dashed line. Okay, so I'm going to graph my solid line. And boy, did I miss. Good thing I can fix this. And adjust this just ever so slightly. There we go. Adjusted my graph. I'm lock it in place. I'm going to put my arrowheads on it, and I'm going to number it equation number 1. Now I'm going to test it so that I can shade it. I can use 0, 0 as a testing point. So if I test 0, 0 on this, I have 0 is less than or equal to 0 minus 5. 0 is not less than negative 5, so I'm not going to shade where 0 is. Okay, I'm going to shade where 0 is not. And I'm just going to, so 0 is, I'm going to shade where 0 is not, which is this portion of this graph. So that's where I would shade this one. Okay, for my second equation, notice my y-intercept, okay, my slope is 1/2, but my y-intercept is 0. Okay, so here's my y-intercept is at 0. It goes up 1 over 2, up 1 over 2. This is a dashed line, so I'm going to take my dashed line now. Okay. Fix this graph just ever so slightly here. Make sure that it's in the right spot. There we go. There's the second graph. Now I need to shade this, and I can't use 0, 0 because it goes through 0, 0. But I could use 0, 3, okay, or 3, 0. It doesn't really matter. Okay, I'm going to use 0, 3, or actually I'm going to use 0, 2, because that way it's a multiple of 2 and it'll be easier. So if I tested 0, 2, I have 0 is less than or equal to 1/2 times 2 over 1. 0 is less than or equal to 1, which is true. So I would shade where 0, 2 is. 0, 2 is right here, so I'm going to shade on that side of the graph in a different color. I'm going to choose yellow. Okay, so this is my graph, and I would shade all of this portion right here. Okay. Where do those 2 colors cross? Is right here. Right in this area right here. So this is the solution to the equation. And sometimes that's really, really hard to see without choosing a third color to color it in with. This is the solution to this inequality, this system of inequalities right there, because that's where the 2 different colors cross. Now, if you don't want to have a bunch of weird melding colors all over your paper, I can show you a different way to graph so that you only have to graph using one color. I'll do that in this next example. Well, that's the solution to this system, where the two different colors cross is the solution of your system of inequalities. Let's look at number 2 here. Okay, this is my, whoa, that's not graph or working crayon. This is my first equation, this is my second equation. Here my slope is 1, my y-intercept is -1. This is a dashed line, this is a dashed line. I always like to tell myself that at the beginning so I don't forget, and I keep forgetting to label my x and y axes. Very bad, I should do that every single time. So my y-intercept is -1, that's right here. My slope is up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1, up 1, right 1. This is a dashed line. Here's my dashed line. Draw my dashed line. Just ever so slightly. Here we go. Put my arrowheads on my dashed line and label this equation number 1. I'm going to test it. I can use 0, 0 on this one. So if I tested 0, 0, I would have 0 is greater than -1, which is true. So I would shade where 0, 0 is. Now here's what I can do that. I'm going to shade where 0, 0 is. That would be going this way. I just put little arrowheads so that I know I would be shading this direction on this graph. And that way I don't actually have to shade it. I just know which direction I would shade it. Then I'm going to go to the second equation. Y is less than 3x plus 4. My slope is 3. My y-intercept is 4. So here's my, I can go up 3 to the right 1 or down 3 to the left 1. Okay. Again, this is a dashed line. Okay, so I'm going to draw my dashed line here. Pretty good line. And in place. Put my arrowheads on it. So we're equation 2. It doesn't go through the origin, so I can definitely use 0, 0 on this one as well. So if I test 0, 0, I have 0 is less than, 0 times 3 is 0, is less than 4, which is true. 0 is definitely less than 4. So I would shade where 0 is, which means I'd go this way on this graph. So where do the two arrowheads point at each other? That's where I would shade. In this particular instance, that's here. So this is where I would be shading my graph. That way you only have to shade in one color. You don't have to have a bunch of colors, and you can just use a pencil if you wanted to instead of a colored pencil. And that's the solution to that inequality, because that system of inequalities points at each other. Number 1 goes up and number 2 goes down, and where they point at each other until they cross is where you would shade. And that's a way of doing it so that you don't have to use 2 different colors. Okay, so that's solving systems of inequalities. All you have to do now is just make sure that you use your dashed or solid lines and shade where the two lines cross. It's not a difficult concept, and you'll find it's kind of a fun thing to do once in a while too.